As we stand on the threshold of our golden years, a time often imagined as serene and fulfilling, the reality for many elderly individuals can be starkly different. Imagine the silent struggles, the untold sacrifices, and the hidden heartaches that accompany the journey of aging without adequate financial security or emotional support. In this powerful exploration, we delve into the profound stories of elderly people facing diverse challenges, from financial dependence to health issues and the yearning for family bonds. Join us as we uncover the essential steps to safeguard our dignity, ensure our well-being, and truly cherish the twilight years of life. 1. Elderly people without pensions or savings. As we journey through life and reach our later years, financial independence becomes more than just a necessity, it is a pillar of dignity. Unfortunately, many elderly individuals find themselves in a vulnerable position without pensions or savings, forced to turn to their children for financial support. This reliance, while sometimes unavoidable, can be a source of deep emotional turmoil. Imagine the once self-reliant parent now needing to ask their children for money. The act itself can be profoundly humbling, creating a storm of embarrassment and a sense of loss of control over their lives. Each request for financial help can be a painful reminder of their diminished independence. The fear of becoming a burden can weigh heavily on their hearts, compounded by the potential for strained family dynamics. Furthermore, the possibility of encountering impatience or resentment from their children can be heart-wrenching. It is a situation that nobody wishes for themselves, a reality that can erode self-esteem and lead to feelings of isolation. This stark reality highlights the importance of planning for our financial future. As we age, maintaining financial independence not only preserves our dignity but also strengthens the bonds with those we love, allowing us to live our golden years with pride and peace of mind. 2. Elderly people without independent housing. Many elderly people dream of living peacefully with their children in their golden years. However, the reality is far from this ideal. Prolonged cohabitation inevitably leads to conflicts, regardless of how dutiful the children are. In rural areas, the situation is even more dire. Elderly parents often give their homes to their children prematurely, leaving themselves without a place to call their own. They are forced to live alternately in their children's homes, leading a nomadic and rootless existence that is both undignified and distressing. This transient life is deeply unsettling. Although it might appear that the children are caring for their parents, the truth is that these elderly individuals endure great hardship. Moving from one child's house to another, they constantly feel like burdens, never truly feeling at home. The lack of stability and independence strips them of their dignity and peace. Living in their son's house feels like living under someone else's roof, subject to the whims and rules of another household. This grim reality underscores the vital importance of independent housing for the elderly. It is not merely a matter of physical shelter, but a fundamental need for stability, dignity, and respect in their later years. The elderly deserve more than just a roof over their heads. They deserve a place they can truly call home. 3. Elderly people who never married or had children. Imagine reaching the twilight of your life, having chosen a path without marriage or children. For some elderly individuals, this choice leads to an isolated reality. As they become bedridden, there's no one to offer even the simple comfort of a cup of tea. Wealth and a place in a nursing home can't shield them from the harshness of their circumstances. Without the strong support of children or family, they become vulnerable to mistreatment by caregivers and bullying by fellow residents. This reality paints a stark picture of loneliness and neglect. The absence of children means the absence of advocates, those who would fiercely protect and care for their aging parents. Instead, these elderly individuals face their most vulnerable years without a safety net, enduring not only physical frailty but also emotional and psychological distress. Their days can be filled with longing for the warmth and security that only family can provide. The message is clear and heart-wrenching. The decision to remain childless can have profound and painful consequences in old age. It serves as a poignant reminder of the irreplaceable value of family bonds and the critical role of children in the lives of the elderly. 4. Elderly people with children who have no prospects. Imagine a life where your children, instead of standing on their own feet, are aimlessly lounging at home, eating and drinking without a care in the world, relying entirely on your hard-earned money. As you grow older, the dream of a peaceful, secure retirement fades into a nightmare. Your savings, no matter how substantial, slowly diminish under the weight of your children's dependence. Each day you see your financial safety net being drained, and the anxiety of an uncertain future looms larger. Your golden years, which should be filled with comfort and joy, are marred by the constant worry of how to stretch your diminishing resources. The harsh reality is that, if your children remain unskilled and unwilling to contribute, your money will eventually run out. When that happens, your family will be unprepared to face any crisis, leaving you vulnerable and stressed in your most vulnerable years. This is a plea to all elderly parents. Recognize the importance of nurturing independence and responsibility in your children. Do not let them drain your resources and your peace of mind. For the sake of your own well-being and the future stability of your family, encourage them to develop skills, seek employment, and become self-reliant. Your happiness and security depend on it. 5. Elderly people with a lifetime of poor conduct. As we journey through life, our actions and character shape the world around us and the memories we leave behind. Some elderly people, now facing their twilight years, look back with regret. In their youth, they made choices that distanced them from the love and respect of those closest to them. They smoked, drank excessively, gambled away their fortunes, and let anger and selfishness rule their lives. They abused their spouses and neglected their families, thinking the consequences were far off in the future. Now, in their old age, these choices have come full circle. Their children and spouses, once the victims of their behavior, have distanced themselves, seeking peace and healing. These elderly individuals find themselves isolated, yearning for the connection and affection they once took for granted. This reflection is a powerful reminder that our actions have lasting impacts. It is never too late to change. Let this be a call to action for all, young and old, to cultivate kindness, patience, and love. To the elderly who recognize their past mistakes, know that redemption and reconciliation are possible. By reaching out with genuine remorse and a desire to make amends, they can still mend broken relationships and find the warmth and companionship they seek. Let us all strive to leave a legacy of love and respect, ensuring that our twilight years are filled with the comfort and joy of cherished relationships. 6. Elderly people who gave all their savings to their children. In the twilight years of their lives, many elderly parents find themselves facing a profound dilemma. Witnessing their beloved children struggle to make ends meet, they don't hesitate to empty their savings, offering their hard-earned nest egg without a second thought. This selfless act is a testament to the boundless love and devotion they hold for their offspring. However, this act of ultimate sacrifice, while noble, carries hidden risks. By giving away their financial security, these parents often place themselves in precarious situations. As they age, the need for medical care and everyday expenses doesn't diminish, it grows. Without a safety net, they may find themselves relying on the very children they sought to protect, creating a cycle of dependency and strain. To all the elderly parents out there, your love and sacrifice are the foundations upon which your families stand. But remember, your well-being is equally important. It's not selfish to preserve some of your savings for your own needs. In fact, by doing so, you ensure that you can continue to be a pillar of support, both emotionally and, if needed, financially for years to come. Your love is a beacon of strength. Make sure it shines bright, not just for others, but for yourself as well. 7. Elderly people whose children live far away. In today's world, many elderly people find themselves living in rural areas while their children have moved to bustling cities, only able to visit once or twice a year. Some children have even settled abroad, making it difficult to return home to see their aging parents. This distance creates a profound sense of loneliness and abandonment for the elderly, who once relied on the daily presence and support of their loved ones. Imagine the sorrow of a mother who yearns to hear her child's laughter but instead is met with silence, day after day. Picture a father whose hands once held those of his children, now trembling with age and left unheld. These elderly individuals often face tragic lives, where the absence of their children is felt deeply in every corner of their homes. The rooms that once echoed with the sounds of family now stand quiet, filled with memories of what once was. In extreme cases, their plight goes unnoticed. The thought that no one might know if they pass away at home is a haunting reality for many. It's a silent cry for help, a reminder of the preciousness of family bonds and the devastating effects of distance. We must remember and cherish our elderly, ensuring they never feel forgotten, no matter how far away we may be. 8. Elderly people with unfilial children. In the twilight years of life, the longing for familial love and support becomes ever more profound. Yet, for some elderly individuals, the reality is a heart-wrenching tale of neglect and sorrow. When children, once seen as the greatest joy and hope for the future, turn away in times of need, the emotional devastation is immense. Imagine enduring the trials of illness, only to be met with indifference from those you nurtured and loved unconditionally. The absence of filial piety leaves a void that no words can fill, as the elderly are left to navigate their struggles alone. The anguish of being abandoned by one's children is a silent suffering that amplifies the challenges of aging. It is not merely the lack of physical care that wounds, but the profound sense of betrayal and isolation. Some elderly individuals are left to grapple with the heartbreaking realization that their children wish for their passing, valuing convenience over compassion. This stark reality strips away the dignity and joy that should accompany the golden years, replacing them with despair and loneliness. In this dire predicament, the emotional toll is as crippling as any physical ailment, leaving scars that run deep and echo the urgent need for a compassionate embrace that seems increasingly out of reach. 9. Elderly people with poor health. In the quiet corners of our homes, many elderly loved ones endure the harsh reality of declining health. Despite the devoted care and affection showered upon them by their children, the shadow of illness can overshadow any sense of comfort or joy. For those confined to their beds by long-term ailments, life can become a relentless cycle of pain and dependence, stretching on for years, sometimes even decades. It is a cruel existence that leaves them trapped in a state of living death, where every day blends into the next without the hope of relief or recovery. This relentless struggle not only diminishes the quality of their lives, but also places a heavy emotional and physical burden on their families. The children who once looked up to them with admiration now watch helplessly, often feeling overwhelmed and powerless. The love and care they provide, though unwavering, cannot heal the deep wounds left by time and sickness. As a society, we must confront this reality and seek compassionate solutions that honor the dignity and worth of our elderly. We owe it to those who have given us so much to ensure that their twilight years are filled with respect, understanding, and genuine quality of life.
If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.
Part 2. Mr. Finn's story. Mr. Finn, a 73-year-old childless elderly man, has lived through it. He used to think that as long as he had a successful career, money, and a partner, he wouldn't have to fear the issue of elderly care. But after his partner passed away 2 years ago, and he moved into a nursing home, he regrettably stated, "After half a year there, one must have children in this life." Here is Mr. Finn's story. At 73 years old, I was born in a county town. My family was considered a wealthy household with a total of 5 children, the eldest sister, me as the second, third brother, fourth brother, and fifth sister. I was the most promising one in the family. From elementary school to high school, I always had excellent grades, much better than my siblings. I was also the most likely to get into college. However, due to the suspension of the college entrance exams, I was sent to the countryside as an educated youth. I stayed in the countryside for 8 years, until 1977 when I returned to the city. By the time I returned to the city, I was already 26 years old. Although I had registered my marriage with my wife, whom I had met during our time as educated youth, both of us had dreams of attending college. Therefore, after we got married, we didn't have children and worked hard together to take the college entrance exams. My parents always disagreed with our decision, believing that I should take the exams but my wife should stay home and have children. But I went against my parents' wishes and insisted on taking the exams together with my wife. Fortunately, in the first year of the resumed college entrance exams, both my wife and I were admitted to the same university. During college, we were busy with our studies and didn't have much of a married life, so we didn't have any children. Originally, we had agreed to have children after graduation when we found jobs. But after graduation, we both were assigned good jobs and we lost the desire to have children. We thought it was great to live just the two of us without the burden of children, living like lovers, even though we were a married couple, free to do whatever we wanted. Besides work, all our time was our own. At that time, my traditional parents, despite having many grandchildren from my siblings, still urged us to have a child, especially since I was in the best condition among the 5 siblings. Having a child wouldn't be a financial burden for me. However, my wife and I had no such desire, especially seeing our colleagues exhausted from working all day and then dealing with family matters at home, some even giving up great job opportunities for their children. My wife and I weren't workaholics, but we thought it was better not to have children so we could freely do what we liked. People advised us to have children, or at least adopt one so someone would care for us in old age. But I thought that as a stable dual-income couple with a house, savings, and a good pension, we wouldn't need to rely on children for old age care. Moreover, at that time we could only have one child, and if it was a daughter, she would marry and leave. Even if we had a son, he might not be filial, so it was better not to have children. In the past, my wife and I didn't know what our child-free lifestyle was called. It wasn't until the 1990s, with more contact with foreign information, that we learned our choice was called DINK dual income, no kids, and many foreigners were doing the same, living freely and openly. Because of this freedom and openness, we never thought there was anything wrong with not having children. We lived for ourselves every day. Unlike others who were working hard to support children, we worked hard to live happily and save for our retirement. For nearly 40 years, we enjoyed a happy child-free life, traveling extensively across the country and visiting many foreign countries multiple times. We lived in a way that many peers envied. I thought this happy DINK life would continue, but after turning 65, we started facing some unavoidable dilemmas. We had planned to rely on each other for elderly care, but growing old made us realize that self-reliance and reliance on a partner were not absolutely feasible. At 66, my wife, who was 1 year older, was diagnosed with severe heart disease. To treat it, we went to many hospitals, but the treatments were only temporary fixes. My wife had several relapses, and although I hired a caregiver to look after her, as her husband, I still had to endure much suffering. Eventually, when I was 71, after more than 4 years of battling illness, my wife passed away. After my wife's death, I tried living alone for a while and hired caregivers, but I couldn't adapt. The house felt empty, so I moved into a well-regarded nursing home in the city at 72. I thought that living with other elderly people, having caregivers, and participating in various activities would make my remaining years enjoyable. Initially, I did feel quite good about it. There were plenty of facilities for elderly entertainment, the food was to my liking, and there were many single elderly people to keep me company. But after about 2 months, I started feeling uncomfortable. Firstly, it was easy to get into the nursing home but hard to get out. During the first month, I wanted to visit home and meet old friends, but I was told that leaving required an application from a guardian who needed to pick me up. My guardian was my nephew, who lived far away in the provincial capital and couldn't come to pick me up. It took a lot of paperwork before I was finally allowed to leave. That was the first time I felt the nursing home was bad and very restrictive. Getting out depended on the situation and the help of children. Without children, elderly people couldn't leave the nursing home if their guardians didn't come. Secondly, there was discrimination between elderly people who had children visiting them and those who didn't. Initially, everything was fine. The elderly people got along well, and the caregivers were friendly and attentive. But over time, as everyone learned I was child-free with a distant guardian, everything changed. Elderly people with children who visited them and took them home for holidays were always treated better than those without visiting children. In all kinds of comparisons and boasting, we childless elderly felt hurt. They often bullied those of us without children, relying on the support of their children. I experienced this firsthand. Additionally, caregivers in the nursing home were selective in their treatment. They weren't very attentive to those of us without children or regular visitors. Some managed to gain favor by tipping the caregivers. Lastly, the nursing home environment was very depressing and torturous. Despite the well-maintained facilities and various entertainment options, after a while, you realize the environment is very gloomy. Being confined in one place, repeating the same routine, and facing other elderly people day in and day out, some of whom are ill or disabled, is tough. I witnessed 3 elderly people passing away in the 6 months I stayed there, which was terrifying. So after 6 months, I grew tired of the nursing home life and returned to my own home. After this experience, I started to regret my decision. I realized that one must have children in this life. If you can't have biological children, at least try to adopt one so you have someone to rely on in old age. A child-free life may be carefree and enjoyable in the early years, but it brings regret and pain in the later years. Nowadays, having children might not guarantee support in old age, but I believe children are like a nuclear deterrent. You might not need them, but you can't afford not to have them. For instance, in a nursing home, the treatment of elderly people with children differs significantly from those without. So, I advise young people today, no matter how good your career is, how well your pension is planned, or how much savings you have, try to get married and have children. Don't wait until you're old and suffering to regret it. Part 3. A 79-year-old woman's honest take on hiring a caregiver. My name is Lee and 79 years old. I used to be a doctor and have been retired for 24 years now. When I first retired, my pension wasn't very high, but it has increased over time. Now I receive $3,000 a month, which is enough for a comfortable life. My husband and I worked at the same place we were introduced by a colleague. I found him to be a diligent and attentive man, both in life and at work. I believed marrying such a person would lead to a good life. Throughout our marriage, he treated me very well. We always communicated openly and rarely argued. We had 2 sons, which was considered good for our time since many families had more children. Both my husband and I had stable jobs and decent incomes, so our living standards were relatively high. We were fair and impartial with our sons, treating them equally, which fostered a strong bond between them. They would often visit us together. After we retired, both our sons had their own families. Understanding the challenges of raising children, I took care of my grandchildren, which was tough but rewarding. When they started school, our lives became much easier. My husband and I enjoyed traveling and often went on trips with friends and colleagues. As we grew older, traveling became less appealing since it took longer to recover from trips, but we still found joy in our daily routines, such as chatting with friends and staying active. 2 years ago, my husband's health deteriorated and he frequently fell ill. Being old myself, I couldn't take care of him properly, so we decided to hire a caregiver instead of burdening our sons. We hired a female caregiver named Rachel for $3,000 a month, the amount of my pension. Rachel was very diligent and took over household chores without needing much direction, allowing us to relax. She managed the house well, making it comfortable for us. Once, during a walk, my husband suddenly collapsed. I was alone and unable to help him. Fortunately, Rachel, worried about our prolonged absence, came looking for us and helped get him to the hospital in time. The doctor said that had we been any later, it could have been fatal. I was deeply grateful to Rachel and gave her a 2,000 yuan bonus, which she happily accepted. Rachel began accompanying us on outings and we treated her even better. My sons visited weekly and often brought more than we could consume, so I let Rachel take some home. During holidays, I also gave her gifts and bonuses. However, over time, I noticed Rachel stealing small items from our home, which I overlooked at first, but then she took a necklace given to me by my husband, which was very precious to me. Despite confronting her, she denied it. Lacking evidence, I searched her room while she was out and found the necklace in her luggage. This betrayal was intolerable, so I decided to fire her. Although she pleaded for another chance, I refused, believing she would repeat her actions. After Rachel left, we tried hiring other caregivers, but none were as competent. Eventually, we decided not to hire any more caregivers. We didn't want to go to a nursing home, preferring the comfort of our own home. After much discussion, we decided to live with one of our sons. We called both sons and their wives to discuss our plan. I explained that we would pay 3,000 yuan for living expenses and 5,000 yuan as a hardship allowance each month to whoever took care of us. My older son and his wife worked in stable jobs and were close to retirement. My younger son was a teacher, and his wife managed a clothing store. Despite my concern, my younger daughter-in-law offered to take care of us, expressing gratitude for our past help with their children. My older daughter-in-law also agreed to assist when needed, especially after her retirement. Moved by their willingness, we moved in with our younger son. My daughter-in-law quit her job to care for us, and we now live happily together. Both sons and their wives are very filial, frequently buying us gifts and spending time with us. Weekly family dinners are a joyful tradition. This experience taught me that in old age, true reliance comes from one's own children. Their filial piety ensures a fulfilling and comfortable life.
If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time.